Hey everyone, this is Austin Shore here with We Write About Music, and today I'm speaking with Brian Stemetzki of Valley of Salt. He has a brand new record on the way. It is called Voice of One Crying in the Wilderness, and I'm super excited to talk to him all about it. Brian, sincerely, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. How are you doing? What's going on?
I'm doing well. It's really nice to meet you and thank you for having me on your show.
You as
Um,
well.
yeah, I appreciate it. I'm really excited about the album.
Yeah, I'm excited for it as well. Where are you in the world before we get going?
Yeah, so I live in New Jersey, specifically
Nice.
in like Gloucester County.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. What's going on there these days? Is it cold yet?
It's about 12 degrees, believe it or
Okay,
not.
I
It
would say
doesn't
it's
get that
cold.
cold here. Yeah, it doesn't get that cold here, but for some reason this year, the past couple of weeks, it's been really cold.
Completely understand. Getting in the thick of winter, but
Yeah.
this is the perfect record to cozy up to. So, um, I want to get straight into this. I want to know, honestly, just based off of the album title and the bio of the record, this seems like a deeply personal record on, specific subjects. So I'd love to open up the floor to you to kind of explain what inspired this and what it's all about.
Yeah, so the album is about John the Baptist. It's a progressive rock sort of album. Um, what inspired me to do this? So I do meet with a musician. His name is Marty Willson-Piper.
Okay.
Marty was with the church and also All About Eve. And I meet with him for this. He does this sessioneer series where he actually has people come in and he gives them suggestions about writing songs, playing the
Okay.
guitar. So I was meeting with him. This started during COVID, because I used to play professionally and then I stopped. As a side note, I am a licensed clinical social worker and I have a private practice. So
Nice.
I have about 50 or 60 therapists that work for me. So I'm
Sure,
really busy.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
clearly.
it came even more busier after COVID, if you can only imagine.
Oh,
But
yeah.
so I started playing again. I started meeting with him, and I started writing a couple songs. And he knows from our conversations we talked about different music, and I told him that I like Yes and Rush, and he said, "Well, you should write something progressive." I said, "Well, I never wrote anything progressive before." He goes, "Well, just try it." So I wrote something, and that's the first track. The love of God is all around us, and I wrote that in a week, and it's about 7 minutes long. He's like, "Wow, that's pretty good." Because you should write something about, an interesting, topic. And I am interested in God and faith. And we
Sure.
were talking about, people from the Bible, and John the Baptist came up as a really interesting character in the Bible. So he said you should write about that. So, I thought about that and I started coming up with songs about his life from the minute he was born, um, specific things that he did to his death. And that's really how that came through. And it came through really quite easily. I worked on the songs for about a year, and I would work on about 2 hours every day, writing and adding to it. So that's how that happened. Yeah, and it is an interesting topic because not many people talk about John the Baptist.
I agree, but listen, we have, 10 million love songs out there. If someone
Right.
wants to create sort of a concept record, this is kind of the way to go. I also feel that when you're writing about something as specific as this, something that I would say most people are not writing about, or maybe even thinking about on a daily basis, juxtaposing it with a prog rock sound is kind of like two opposites coming together. Like
Right.
you name Yes and Rush, two bands that like my parents grew me up on and bands that I still listen to religiously today. So I'm really interested to see how the two combine together. But I also saw that you described this as sort of a rock opera. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And when it releases in February, that would be another dream of mine for someone to make it into a rock opera. So I'm trying to
Yeah,
promote it as much as possible. I think it really could be. I think there's enough interest, you know, in those themes, not just in a religious theme, but in a theme of someone really telling the truth and
of
as a
course.
character. He's really fascinating and almost like a rock star sort of guy,
Yeah,
John.
absolutely.
So he kind of fits that progressive rock kind of genre.
Right. You know, I get a lot of, I guess I would say like religious based music sent to me. And I really enjoy it because not only do you get to learn about specific characters or beliefs or ideals, but then obviously the music, the instrumentals play such a massive part in actually bringing that to life. And in this
Hmm.
scenario, I would say that like 95% of them tend to lean more towards, say, like gospel style
Hmm.
music, or maybe even more like stripped back acoustic singer-songwriter music.
Right.
So when this was put on my table and it said that it was a prog rock record, for me, it's nothing that I've ever experienced before. So I kind of want to know from you, you you explained how the sound was sort of created with an idea from your friend, but did you always have an idea of being like, well, I want to have this this subject matter, but I want to mix it with something that seemingly is opposite?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I would answer that by, when I was writing these songs and I did it on not Pro Tools, Logic.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
you know, I do have a degree in music and I did study jazz. So and I could play the piano, I could write and I could
Yeah.
read music. It's not a problem. So I just kind of layered the sounds down and as I did it, I kept coming up with more and more parts.
Sure,
So,
sure.
so it kind of felt that way, and then and actually, as I wrote the parts, I'm like, well, this would sound good with a French horn, or
Yeah.
this would sound good with a trombone and trumpet because I know those instruments. When I was in school, I used to write arrangements for, so I just kind of added them. It wasn't really done on purpose. It was just added to the sound, and if I liked it, I kept it on there.
Yeah.
But I guess I do have more of a progressive rock streak in me than I ever knew, because
Clearly, yes.
it's yeah, it kept happening that way, and Marty Willson-Piper, who I said I was working with, he kind of guided me to just keep going in a natural sort of way. So it wasn't anything really specifically that I chose to do that. It just kind of
Sure.
naturally went that way. It was just
Yeah.
almost like I was guided that way.
Yeah.
Um, for progressive rock and John the Baptist. I know it's a strange combination, but it works. And playing the guitars, I have over 50 guitars, lots of
Oh,
vintage guitars.
geez.
So I try to use all those guitars
Yeah.
when I was playing. The other cool thing is that we use all vintage guitars and vintage amps. There really wasn't any plugins for any of the guitar parts or
That's
any of the,
awesome.
yeah.
Nice. Well, what did you find more difficult in this scenario? Obviously, writing lyrics can be very difficult for people. You said that it came a little bit easier to you, but on the subject matter, I think you still have to be true to the stories.
Right,
But
right,
then also, I find progressive rock is really interesting. I sort of, and just an opinion, I sort of equate it to jazz in a sense, where
right,
I don't think that there's anything wrong with what you do. Because if you play an off note or it kind of, takes a left turn, people can just, chalk it up to, well, it's progressive rock and it does its own thing and it challenges the
right,
listener. So
right.
obviously a long-winded explanation here, but did you find one easier to sort of put down, the lyrics or the instrumentation?
I would say the lyrics came right from the Bible. All those things are
Okay.
right in the Bible. So, just looking at that and okay, well, it's right there. The story's right there, and it's almost like it's written right there for music. So, all you have to do is really just expand on that, because
Yeah.
the stories are right there and they're right there, almost like they're begging to be written.
Exactly.
So, that's all I really did. There was a couple that I just came up with those lyrics and,
Sure.
just there, inspired by his story. So, I would say the lyrics came pretty easy. Um, Again, I would say the instrumentation came pretty easy because I didn't have a deadline. I just did it as,
Yeah.
like I said, I did it 2 hours a day and I just added those things on. It was a real joy to do that. So I agree with what you're saying about progressive rock, because there's really no wrong notes. But everything that I did actually, I had written out music and I gave to, the studio musicians that came in. I actually gave them the music too, so they pretty much
Nice.
played it, as I wrote it, which made it easier.
Nice. I'm actually happy that you brought that in or you brought that up because I want to sort of, open the curtain up and go a little bit behind the scenes in terms of making this. So you said that it started out with your friend and yourself, but then you hired on studio musicians to actually put it all together.
Yeah, so I went to Dallas, Texas, and I recorded it. And we hired studio musicians, specifically a bass player, uh, a drummer that played with a polyphonic spree. I don't know if I'm
Nice.
pronouncing that name correct.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and again, Marty was there and he produced it. So we had a lot of really pros in there coming in. We had the gospel singers that teach at a college, Christian college there.
Cool.
So they were all real pros and it was really easy to do. Um, so I would say that the recording went pretty easy. It did take about a month to do because they're complex arrangements, and we were
Sure.
working. I would say we were working from like 10 a.m. to about 1 a.m. every day.
That's a
Yeah,
that's a
it's a
day and a
lot of
half
work.
right there.
Right,
Yeah.
right. When you're in the studio, it's a lot of work, but there's a lot of time where you're just sitting and talking.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's
time flies by and it's somewhere where you want to be,
right,
obviously.
exactly, exactly. So, there's a lot of work there and Marty is really was meticulous about it. I remember I did a guitar part I think at least 30 times and it was only for like 10 seconds,
Sure.
but he would go back in there and he would fiddle with the amps and then we would change out amps and it really did make a difference in the sound,
Of
you know.
course.
So yeah.
Had you ever composed anything of this magnitude before? Or is this kind of your first foray into like, I guess being the puppeteer and being like, hey, you do this, you do this, you do
Right.
this.
No, I've never composed anything like this
Wow.
before. In fact, I've never really composed music, so I never really, to be honest, I never really thought that I could do that.
Okay.
And then when I started
Yeah.
doing it, I realized, yeah, well, actually, I can do this, and it's not that hard. And no, it came easily, and I guess
Right.
it's one of those things, you know, I think people think composing is a magical thing that only, certain people can do, and I don't think that's true. I think it's just something, obviously there are people that can't compose, but I think it's something if you just do it, if you have whatever that talent for, you should be able to do it.
I agree. Listen, I think that's really inspirational as much as delivered it and it may not seem like it. I think a lot of people out there are scared to dip their toes into something that they've never tried before. They
Right,
always say like you need your 10,000 hours of experience before you're a professional. But I think the music industry is an extremely different beast where it's like there's no steps 1 through 10 on doing something. You
right,
kind of just have to dive head first and figure it out on your own. I think the experience maybe comes from listening to more complex music. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right,
for
right,
example, if you're listening to, radio pop hits all day long, chances are your threshold for making music isn't going to be through the roof because they're
right,
fairly simple song, normal chord changes, whatever. But again, going back to the whole progressive rock thing, like for me, when I listen to that, it kind of transcends music and becomes more of an art form. And I relate it, like I said, to jazz, but also like classical music, where you're putting together these symphonies of sound and nothing is right and nothing is wrong. It's kind of just its own thing. So I think what you've done here is you've said, okay, I've never done this before. I'm gonna give it a shot. But then you really shot for the stars in terms of like, you know what I'm saying? You were
right,
just like, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it in my vision and do it correctly.
right. You make a really good point. I think the music that you listen to will filter out. And again,
Yes.
I think I stated before, I did go to school for music. I studied jazz. I played
Yeah.
professionally for a while. So I played a lot of complex music. So that music was always in my head.
Yeah.
So again, if I was listening to, simple pop music or something like that,
Sure.
I don't know if I would come up with the same stuff, but I listened to classical, I listened to a lot of jazz, progressive rock. I also listen to simple music too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of influences that go into it, but that's a really good point.
Yeah. Listen, there's a time and a place for any genre of music and whatever mood
Right.
you're feeling. I think that's the magic of music is you can fit your mood to whatever you're listening to. But truthfully, it kind of opens up like your neural pathways of what you're able to create based on the things that you're listening to. The
Right.
more complex, the wider net you can cast in the things that you make. So I think that's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, for those, that are going to listen, I'm going to say it again at the end of the interview, but the record comes out on February 3rd, 2025. And, you know, I know the complexity of this record is extremely difficult to play. Obviously, it took a while to make. Is it a hope or a want or a dream to potentially get out there and play these songs live?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that I'm going to be looking toward this year. Obviously, you would have to be with the right musicians,
Sure.
um, and I'd have to figure out how I can bring that to some sort of to pull it off live.
Of
Yeah,
course.
but I would like to do that. And I think as I promote this more, and then it gets out there, I will definitely look into it. I mean, there's some musicians in the area that definitely are more than capable of playing the
Sure.
music. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That would be incredibly awesome,
Nice. Okay.
especially
Well,
if there was a rock opera and I was playing and
that's
they
what I'm
were,
saying.
that would just be
I
incredible.
fully see you up there just like putting it all together, and
Right,
that's awesome.
exactly.
Hypothetically speaking, is there one song on this record that you would want to hear played by an orchestra or played live the most?
Yeah, I would say that's a good. Don't Be Afraid, the second song on there. It's almost got a Led Zeppelin kind of Deep Purple kind of
Nice.
vibe. I think that would be great with strings and a full orchestra, because it has a lot of different parts to it, a lot of soft parts, a lot of hard parts. I think that would just be great to hear.
Nice. Well, in a similar vein, was that the most difficult song to put together on the record?
Um, Actually, no, I think the first song was the most difficult because it was an instrumental and it went through different time changes and
Okay.
it has at least 25 guitar tracks on it. So,
Jeez.
so it actually has a sitar at
Goodness.
the electric sitar at the end, which electric sitar doesn't have a strap, and the way it's shaped, it'll actually come off your body. So the drummer, who's a very very nice guy, actually made a strap for me so I could hold it while I was playing it. So I would
Cool.
say that was the most difficult because it goes through different time changes and when you're working on Pro Tools and stuff like that, you have to mark where the time changes. Then
Yeah,
it's a little difficult, which I didn't know would be that difficult while writing it, but we got it figured out and we were able to do it, and it sounds great.
very cool.
Yeah.
Listen, I have a couple more questions for you. I want to know, you've named a couple of influences that help create this record, at least somewhere in your subconscious. Are there maybe one or two like understated influences that you didn't expect to sort of come out in the final mix that you would attribute the sound or style to?
Yeah, I would say as far as guitar players, I would say Jeff Beck,
Okay,
who
cool.
I like, but I don't really listen to that much for whatever reason. I would say Gary Moore is another influence that I think his playing is great, but I don't listen to him too much, but it comes out. His blues guitar playing is really great. And I would even say like even like Joe Satriani and those type of guitar players,
Very
who
cool.
specifically, listen to or copy any of their riffs, they come out in that way. And I think jazz too, there's a lot
Yeah.
like Al Giamoli, I could say definitely, as far as the fast runs, would definitely be an influence.
Awesome. Brian, I've got one more question. And basically the question is like for anyone that is going to listen to this and discover you for the first time, is there an opening message that you'd like to say to them before they listen to this record in whole? Something that you think is important for them to know?
Yeah, I would say listen with it with open ears and an open heart, and see if you could see what the message is. That's
Nice.
all. Yeah,
No, I
and
think that's solid.
yeah, and I think that the message could be different for everybody, but there's definitely a message there, and I think if you listen to the whole record, you can see what that message is. And again, that could be mean different things for different people, and
Right.
that's
I mean, listen, like I fully agree. I think like any more complex record, it always takes more than one, two, or three listens to really understand what's going on.
Right,
Again, it goes back to like, not to keep bashing pop music, but if you listen to it one time, you pretty much got the gist. This
right,
is one of those records that's complex and has depth and texture, and like your brain can only take so much. You know what I'm
right,
saying? It begs you to go back and experience more to kind of unlock what you may have missed. Um,
right.
so, Brian, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, obviously, but I want to plug this record one more time before we wrap
Oh,
up. So, for everyone listening or watching, if you didn't know, I'm speaking with Brian Stemetzki. The band is called Valley of Salt, and the record is called Voice of One Crying in the Wilderness. Once everything is out, we will have the links that you can listen, share, follow along, stay in touch. Hopefully, a live show's in the works, but no pressure on you to do that.
great,
But
great.
I'm just genuinely excited to experience this again. And sincerely, I thank you for taking the time. It means a lot.
Thank you, and I appreciate you being able to do the interview.
You're
Much
very
appreciated.
welcome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Listen, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Stay warm out there, and I hope to speak soon. We'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks a lot. You have a great
Awesome.
day.
Take care. Bye bye.